were acutely aware of the needs and priorities and cultural realities and backgrounds of our large population. And so they drew upon India's ancient traditions and genius as well to evolve a brand of republican democracy in which the will of diverse people can find expression. And this, of course, has been no small feat, given the large size and variety of elections. We were talking with President Uribe this afternoon, as Foreign Minister Benjamin just mentioned, about the fact that we had 714 million registered voters in this year's elections, and every Indian general election simultaneously breaks the world record for the largest single exercise in democratic franchise. But it's not just the numbers, I think, that signify the difference. It is that the numbers reflect the kind of diversity I described. To give you an example, the last election, not this one, but the one 5 years earlier, in 2004, was won by a woman political leader of Roman Catholic faith and Italian descent, Sonia Gandhi, who then made way for a Sikh, Manmohan Singh, to be sworn in as Prime Minister by a Muslim, President Abdul Kalam, in a country 81% Hindu. I mean, that is the sort of thing for which there is no equivalent anywhere in the world. We all applauded the extraordinary election of President Obama in America last year. But it reminded us that for 220 years before that, America had never elected a president or a vice president who had been anything but white, male, and Christian. And the truth is that that is the oldest democracy in the world. And it is relatively unusual to find the sort of thing we've seen in India. Now, this is happening in this particular context, but it's also happening while other important social experiments have to take place. So we have the huge challenge of empowering women in our policy. It's okay in the cities where educated women have long since been in positions of prominence, even dominance, if I may say so. We have amongst the world's first women graduates, the world's first women doctors, the world's first women pilots, the world's first women CEOs, and one of the world's first women heads of government, our Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. But in our villages and in our traditional backward areas, it's still a challenge. So by law, the government has decreed that in our village councils and panchayats, 50% of the chiefs will be women, and 33% of all seats. And therefore, all candidates will have to be women. And that's been one sort of technique. Another thing we've tried to do is bring the young people. In a country where 65% of our population is under 35 years of age. So that's more than 650 million people of that age in our country. And everyone above the age of 18 can vote. It was very striking when I'm a new politician, I entered politics for the first time this year. I was elected in May and went to the Central Hall of Parliament for the first time as an elected member and sat there and listened to a short, as often is the case with him, short, very wise speech by our Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. And he said, we must always be conscious of the fact that we enjoyed the support of so many young voters in this election. And he said we must always respect the impatience of the young. What a wonderful thought from a 77-year-old Prime Minister. The impatience of the young is what motivates him and our government. And it is a country where the young really matter. Not just matter because they are already there and the numbers there, but they matter politically as well, because each of the next 5 years, 20 million Indians will turn 18 and become eligible to go to the next election. And what is going to happen if they don't feel that the government that we have in position will be able to ensure that their tomorrow is better than their parents yesterday. So to hear President Uribe again talking about the importance of the young in Colombia was a great reminder of the parallel political motivations that sustain our two countries. We are also united, and I have been able to exchange this thought earlier with the Colombian leadership, in our sense that democracy and development are not incompatible. Indeed, that the opposite is true, that democracy is essential to development. Because in fact, in India we have differences of caste, creed, color, culture, costume, custom, cuisine, all this in our country, and even conviction. But we manage to rally around a consensus. And that consensus, as I said, is ultimately democracy. That's what sustains our developmental efforts. That's what makes possibility of meaningful change. And in Colombia, we've seen how democracy has been able to not only promote development, but to actually unite the country in putting to an end a terrible insurrection marked by terrorism, kidnappings, narco-trafficking, and great loss of life. And to be able to overcome that sort of challenge through the sustained popular support of a democracy, that has been, I think, fascinating for all of us in India to watch. And we feel enormous respect for Colombia's democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, since our independence in India, we've made concerted efforts to make our democratic process more broad-based. We've talked about the women and the young and so on. We haven't mentioned the fact that we have an independent election commission, and that amongst other things we've been able to invent electronic voting machines that actually work, have no hanging chads, and have actually been able to function effectively in heat and dust in places without electricity, because they can also operate on batteries, and that have been able to be effective in conducting the world's largest democratic elections. You know, some people question the efficacy of democracy in developing countries. They talk about the need for swift action to promote development. But though we're not minimizing in any way, in either India or Colombia, the difficulties we face in tackling poverty, issues of food security, shelter, health, education, and so on, we can only meaningfully tackle them in a spirit of freedom. And that, I think, is extremely important in both domestic policy and foreign policy. This spirit of freedom and independence has guided our foreign policy options. Both India and Colombia have been active members of the non-aligned movement, out of a conviction that we would not like to be aligned to any bloc that might compromise our hard-fought freedom and sovereignty. But we are also both members of the Conference of Democracies, because democracy also shapes who we are as a nation. Our nations are certainly committed to strengthening South-South cooperation for our common good, because we are conscious that we're both developing countries, and that the challenges of development will guide our mutual cooperation. Our ongoing close consultations and support on several international issues of mutual concern only proves the point. It's wonderful to come and have a series of meetings, as I've done today, ranging from the President of the House of Representatives in the Parliament, to the Presidents of the country, the Vice President, the Foreign Minister, various senior officials, and realize how many areas of agreement we have, indeed how few are our areas of divergence. And indeed our ongoing cooperation, I think, will span the entire range of issues that keep the world on its toes these days, from climate change, the global financial crisis, trade, investment, and indeed the international institutions. We have spoken frankly about UN reform as an area where on most issues we agree. We have a small difference on the question of the Security Council. But there too, we find that it is like Colombia and India being two doctors looking at the same patient, who share the same diagnosis but differ on the prescription. I think we both agree that the United Nations Security Council today reflects the geopolitical realities of 1945 and not of 2010. We both agree that it is rather odd that 5 countries should enjoy a certain permanent membership status, veto rights over the rest of the world, for virtue of the fact that they won a war 65 years ago. That is history. It doesn't explain what we should be doing tomorrow. We both agree that our good friends in Europe, and I say this with all respect to the European ambassadors here, with 5% of the world's population, ought not to have 33% of the Security Council seats. And so on. There are many, many aspects of the shared analysis of the United Nations where we don't disagree. It is how to proceed